Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I was supposed to wear a suit, but my wife gave me blue pants and a pink shirt. I said to her, and she says, it's not pink, it's peach. And it's salmon. And you're in Vancouver Island. So I guess I fit perfectly. It is what it is. Early on, being a married man for about 150 years at least, I learned very quickly not to fight sometimes. Definitely not the fights that I know I'm not going to win, and I like to win fights. And also I learned, and this is an advice that I want to give it to the younger generation, do everything in your power not to turn your wife as your enemy, because sooner or later you will have to go to bed and you will sleep and you will have no idea what is being done to you when you're in your own bed. So, well, that's what I learned, and so far so good. I'm still alive. I was asked to share the story of the COVID craziness, and it is truly a crazy story. If this was a story from Czechoslovakia or Poland under the boots of the Soviets, it would be pretty much, well, it would be a crazy story too, but it would fit what we were experiencing growing up under the boots of the Soviets. But this is a story straight from our wonderful, amazing country called the Dominion of Canada. Well, now I call it the Chinada, because of what we are seeing those wannabe tyrants, or as I call them, the pharaohs, are doing to all of us. And that's why I think it's so important. I still believe that Canadians do not understand the importance of my case. So here is the story. I'll try to go fast because there's a lot of things that happened, and many of you have seen my story from that video during the Passover celebration, when illegally the police officers with bylaw services and health inspectors illegally invaded our holy place, our place of worship. And I was not prepared for them to come in. I've told them they're not allowed to come in. I trespassed them. And that's why I was shocked when they did it anyway. And the biggest shock was when I turned to my right and I saw them all muzzled like monkeys coming into the place. You see, we have never shut down our church, and people that would come to our church, most of them were not muzzled. And even if someone would come with a face covering, very quickly, usually after the second song, they would take it down because no one else would wear it. So when I look at them, I was stirred immediately because all of them were muzzled. And I said, okay, there's something horrible happening here. I ran to the pulpit. We already had few people in the church preparing, the prayer warriors, the worshipers. And I took the cell phone and I started to record what was about to happen. Why? Because many times authorities, police, bylaws, politicians, mainstream propaganda, they would lie. And they have no problem, believe me, to lie. They have no problem to stand before the judges, swear on the Bible, and lie. Manufacturing documents, making stuff up. In the face of evidence, they have no problem to lie, those people. So I recorded it, and I was preparing a sermon from the story of Moses. Let my people go. So that's what I had on my heart. Get out. Get out, you Nazis. Get out, you Gestapo. Just get out. They wanted to have a conversation with me, but I'll have none of it. I kicked them out. I told them to do not come back unless it's with a warrant. But why I said it, I have been widely criticized in certain circles, especially the clergymen, that I was un-Christian. I was un-Canadian. Well, duh, I'm a Polish immigrant to start with. I am not polite as you are. If I see evil, I will punch it in the face. That's the Polish style. And I will not be apologizing for it. I'm so sorry that I punched you in the nose. No, I wanted to punch you in the nose, and I did it, and I'm not sorry for it. So my story started way before, and I just want to let you know how it started so you can understand that for me this was not my first rodeo. This was not the first encounter. It was many encounters with authorities before. So we were a very successful business people. We were building houses. I was working for the richest people on earth, building their multi-million properties. We had a media outlet. We were doing really good. We were developers. I was doing renovations, malls, apartments, you name it. But God called us into a mission field. And out of all the missions, He called us to the homeless that we had no idea. We didn't know anything about it. You don't call a rich man to the homeless, because I'm telling you, I had no idea what those people are facing. But we knew God, and we wanted to serve Him, and we wanted to do our best. So I started to work with the homeless people since 1999, and then full-time since 2005. And it was then, when we both left the business realm, never went back, lost millions of dollars, properties, houses, and we started to work with the homeless people, where I received my first shock when the police officers and the Bible services showed up, and they said to us that giving free goods and services in Canada now is prohibited by law. You're not allowed to feed another human being. It's like, are you serious? They said, if you continue feeding the poor, we're going to charge you. I said, well, then bring it on. We survived the Nazis, we survived the communists, I'll survive the bylaw services and the police attack on us. So they did. And I started to receive tickets for giving free goods and services. In the city of Calgary, if you give a sandwich to a dying child, you just broke the law. But there is more. They came back and they said, well, by the way, giving printed material, that's also illegal. So the police came and confiscated all of our Bibles and gospel tracts. And I'm talking about 2005. So I started to yell and scream. God has given me, my mom a couple months ago, she called me and she is monitoring what I'm doing, and when I'm posting stuff or other people are posting, and she says, well, it looks like you're still yapping. And I said, yes, Mom. I'm still yapping. Well, you're pretty good at it, so keep yapping. So now I have an order from my mom, and the Bible says, honor your father and your mother. So that's what I'm doing. Well, the truth is, I was always a big mouth. I would not attack you, but if you came for a fight, I would give you your money worth. I was a professional boxer, I was a martial art expert, teacher. I used to teach police officers how to do self-defense, and if challenged, I fought. I would not run away from a fight. So this fight came to me. I was not looking for it, but it came. I decided to stand up and fight. They confiscated our Bibles, our gospel tracts. Then they came back and they said illegal signage. I received $10,000 tickets for having a sign, illegal sign, saying Jesus is King or Jesus loves you. I was charged with illegally congregating in a park, and we congregated in a park that was called the Needle Park. And why? Because you were literally walking on needles. Police refused to show up. We brought the church between about 50 prostitutes and pimps and about 50 drug dealers under the bridge in front of the drop-in center in hell. And the authorities stepped in. And then the politicians started to talk about it, and more police were showing up, and more tickets I was receiving, and then I ended up on every news outlet for years, smeared, attacked, lawbreaker, troublemaker. That was a 10-year war. 300 citations, 11 arrests for illegally feeding the poor, and about 100 court cases at that time. So why am I sharing this with you? Because some people think that they just woke up one day and I just decided to yell at them. Because I'm a horrible Polish person. Listen, I endured 10 years of non-stop ongoing harassment from the authorities. They bankrupted us. We had to sell our properties, our houses. I remortgaged my house 7 times during that time. But we won. 2015, I lost my charitable status. The federal government said to me in 2008, because I speak negatively. If I was speaking positively, then I would be their new hero, the poster boy. But because I was speaking negatively about abortion, homosexuality, and divorce, I'm not eligible to have a charitable tax status. So I started to meet in churches, and I started to warn the pastors and others, this is communism, my friends. This is socialism. This is police state. This is not the free and democratic society anymore. Believe me, I'm a Polish immigrant, and if you don't believe Artur Pawlowski, believe my accent. My accent knows what I'm talking about. I grew up in hell, and I don't want my children to grow up in hell, and I definitely don't want their children, my grandchildren, to grow up and face what I, with my wife, what we had to face. My wife was born in Poland in prison because her mom wanted to escape communism, but she was caught while pregnant. So my wife was born in prison. That's how crazy communism is. So we started to fight. We won 2015. I won my last court of appeal, over 100 court cases, and they left me alone. Of course, I was smeared and called every name under the earth. To this day, pretty much every week, I learn something new about myself. Apparently, I work for Soros, I'm controlled opposition. Justin Trudeau Castro, I call him, bought us houses 25 years ago. And then I worked for the Pope. What a banner when he came to Edmonton, he didn't call me. Apparently, you have $20 million on a bank account, and I am, Cabal, Mossad, Russian spy. That bothers me a little bit because you don't call a Polish immigrant a Russian spy. I would say to them, are you people insane? I mean, this is not the Russian accent, it's a Polish one, so please learn that. The latest one, which is hilarious, and my wife loves it. I have been accused of kidnapping her when she was 7 years old. Well, the problem with that story is we're the same age. And she says publicly, numerous times, she would come and says, thank you for thinking I'm, still a teenager of some sort, and, so it flatters her. But that's the insanity. I'll tell you why they're doing this, because they're afraid. They're afraid. Think about it, why they attacked a pastor. Why they attacked a man that knows what he's talking about, because I grew up under socialism and communism, and not just in any country. You gotta remember, I grew up in Poland. Poland, the nation that was invaded by the Nazis. I grew up in a city that had a concentration camp, and as kids we were playing in the bunkers of the SS. I went to Auschwitz-Birkenau many times and other concentration camps. My grandma, they did experiments on her in Auschwitz. Why would they be terrified of a person that knows what he's talking about? Because I'm speaking the truth. And what we are observing right now, my friends, is a repetition of history. We've learned nothing. I remember when I came to this country, there was always this slogan every November, lest we forget. We have forgotten. And we have forgotten long time ago. We're not teaching our children history. Those poor kids don't know anything. We are not even teaching them mathematics or biology 101. Do you know that children think that you can milk a bull? Do you think that that's okay? You know, they're being subjected to 10,000 different genders. So I read the Bible, and I have found only 3 genders in the Bible, believe it or not. Only 3. They think there is like 10,000 of them. I looked and I looked and I looked, and I have only found 3. Male and female and stupid. There is absolutely nothing else over there. And the more PhDs it looks like you have, the dumber you have become. It's actually extraordinary thing that I'm observing, because I'm talking to professors, I'm talking about people that should know better. But they actually believe that your kid can be a kitty. And they're going to provide those children with all kinds of different things when they need a washroom. This is insanity. So I started to think, okay, what's going on really? Really, what's going on? They are destroying the moral fabric of the society. When the society is messed up, that doesn't even know that God created male and female. If you can think like you're a whitetail, I guess you will have a problem during the hunting season. But hey, that's your right. Then they have you. Have you noticed that even communists, even the crazy Putin, which is not a good man, he was a head of the KGB, but even he is not allowing this perversion in his country, because he wants his woman strong. He wants his men strong. The Russian man, the warrior type. Of course, in a Western civilization, we don't want men strong. Men are supposed to act like women. And women are supposed to act like men, so everything is flipped upside down. That's why the federal government punished me by taking the charitable tax receipt. Fast forward. We stood our ground, we kept feeding the people, we feed thousands of people. I started about 30, 40 different similar ministries to the one that we have right now. Street churches all over the world. We did mission fields, we built orphanages in Africa and churches, and we ministered in other parts of the world, and I've done Christian festivals, you name it. And I was a very happy camper to do that until the 2020 showed up. And here is what I received. We're feeding the poor. We have a crisis just like you have here. There is thousands upon thousands of homeless people roaming our streets. And I have to let you know how the system works for you to understand why the government stepped in with such a hate. You know that the government pays the shelters per head like cattle. More cattle, more money. Less cattle, less money. In the province of Alberta, the provincial government designates $230 million every single year to fight homelessness. So I started to ask a simple question. Don't do it if you don't want to end up in prison. Where is the money? What happens with the money? Because if you give me $230 million a year to fight homelessness, I'll build them a house. Every single one will end up with a house. Where is the money? Well, they kicked me out from the radio. Finally, I had to shut down my TV program as well, and then I was taken to court. The provincial, municipal government and the shelters took me to court, trying to shut down our ministry. Within the first 3 months, we took 600 people off the streets. And then I find out that every homeless person is hooked on some kind of drugs. And that's usually from $100 to $1,000 a day. If you multiply this, we're talking about millions of dollars that someone was losing somewhere. So they needed this to stop. 2020 came, we still were doing what we were called to do, feeding the poor, preaching the gospel. We had our own church in a building as well. And the government sent me a letter and said, we're in the middle of this pandemic, this emergency, you have to stop feeding the poor. And I'm thinking to myself, something does not add up. Because when there is, let's say there is truly an emergency, my services now are needed more than ever. So I replied to them and said, you people don't make any sense. We got 15 to 20,000 homeless people facing homelessness every single year. If you shut down the shelters and missions like ours, the soup kitchens, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think those people are going to do? Because I'll tell you, I work with the people every day, and people need to eat. And if you don't provide them necessities of life, and there is no other way to get them, they're going to turn into crime. So you've got 15 to 20,000 people desperate, aggressive, violent, breaking into people's homes, whacking grandma's heads, breaking into grocery stores, into garages, into cars. You people don't make any sense. So I kept feeding the poor, and then the shocker came when 12 officers came to our church service, and they said that I'm going to be arrested and ticketed up to $1 million. So I was the first Canadian, I don't know if you remember that story, Rebel News covered that story, and out of that story, by the way, the democracy found was birthed. We started this because we realized that there is so many hurting people by the government, attacked viciously through the court system, that they needed help. And my story was very popular, it raised awareness internationally, and people were able to give. And now we have 2,400 different individuals being helped through that initiative. So I received the ticket. It was not the big one at that time. It was $1,200, but I was threatened with an arrest and $1 million ticket. And that was going on for the rest of the year. I appealed the decision to the mayor. I appealed it to the premier, at that time, Jason Kenney, to every minister, and no one replied. No one cared. And that was my second proof that this whole thing has nothing to do with helping people, keeping them alive or healthy. This is a tyranny, and this is an attack on our rights and freedoms. This is all about political control. So we kept feeding the people. They kept showing up. Every time we were on the streets, we feed people 3 times a week, and 3 times a week we meet in a building, and they were coming to our churches all the time. The culmination of the story of 2020 happened when Justin Trudeau and premiers and the mayors went on television and they said, kids, have a happy Halloween. Remember that time? Just be respectful, stay healthy and have a great time. And just a few weeks after that, do you remember what happened? The same individuals went on television and they said, we have to cancel Christmas. Remember that? We have to cancel Christmas. We're canceling Christmas. And I look at this and I shook my head and I went on television too. Why not? They can do it, I can do it. And I said, you devils, I'm canceling you. You cannot cancel Christmas. You cannot cancel God. And I'm inviting everyone to the biggest Christmas celebration in the land. Thousands of people showed up. We had AAA steaks, which was a killer, for the homeless. We had gifts for the homeless people. And we also had guests, over 100 police officers, 52 police cars, 20 cops on bicycle, chief of police showed up himself, and anti-terrorists came as well. So I think they did all of that because we did the unthinkable. And I'm guilty as charged. We did the unthinkable. We had carolers. And at that time, you were not allowed to sing. And we brought a special team of carolers. And they were singing the Christian songs. And it was a very joyful celebration. The cops were not impressed. And they came bearing gifts. It was Christmas after all. and they gave me 15 COVID tickets for that horrible crime. So that's 2020. I don't know if you remember, our chief of police went on television and said, we will be monitoring the driveways. If we see extra people, we're going to break the doors and we're going to arrest, and you're not allowed to have a brother for coffee, no family dinners. So, we're Polish immigrants. I'm so different than most of Canadians. When they put arrows that way, I went the opposite way. When the door was that way, I would choose a different one. So I was bumping on people and scaring them to death. And they were jumping out like I was walking virus. I don't know. Sometimes I did that for fun. It was very entertaining. So we are just different. And we invited our friends and the whole family for a dinner, and I took a picture and sent it to them, come and get me. So they did. Just later on, I think they took the invitation and they showed up. So I had about 40 charges during that time. Week after week, I'll have detectives, the highest paid police officers knocking on my door. I had anti-terrorists, bylaw services, peace officers, police officers constantly monitoring us, coming. One time, they blocked our entire driveway, and they prohibited people from driving into a parking lot of a church. It took me 45 minutes to fend off those hyenas. And can you believe it that they showed up with a Chinese health inspector to Pastor Artur Pawlowski? That didn't go very well. I said to him, you brought us virus from China and spies from China? Get out of our property. So I was called a bigot, I was called a racist, and all kinds of different things. But finally they left. They showed up with the telescopic cameras later on, and they realized they can't take us down, men, so they started to take pictures of women and children. And that's why I started to call them Nazis, Gestapo, KGB, because if you know your history, you know that that was the tactics that they were using to pressure men. If they couldn't get them for whatever reasons, they would go after their wives and their children. And then April of 2021 came. They walked into our sanctuary. I kicked them out. I told them to get out and never to come back unless they come back with a warrant. 3 weeks later, they found I call them the three crooked amigos. The first judge in the province of Alberta, his name is David Gates. Maybe he's related to Bill Gates. The very man that is telling you, Mom, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And you will be munching on the crickets. I hope you like them. And you will be riding on a bicycle in minus 35 in Alberta, and you will be happy. While at the same time, the Gates family owns more land than any other human being in the United States of America. The same people that are telling you you will own nothing, you will be eating bugs and riding a bicycle, just flew a few months ago to Davos with over 1,000 private jets, went into their SUVs, and were eating the most expensive steaks, the Japanese steaks. The same people. So they went and they found this crooked judge, David Gates, and believe it or not, he gave them the power to break the Criminal Code of Canada, section 176, 1, 2, and 3, that states clearly that what they were doing to us, the churches, the clergymen, was completely illegal against the Criminal Code of Canada. They were the criminals. They were the lawbreakers. But they did it anyway because they had the backing of the politicians and the corrupted judges. David Gates gave them the power to enter our church anytime they want with whomever they wanted to enter it. So they showed up with the SWAT team. SWAT team shows up, I kicked them again, they showed up again, kicked them again, and then they went to the boss of judges, That second crooked amigo, his name is John Rook the Crook. And you can Google them up. They're all highly perverted, wicked, evil people. Those bought and paid for judges, corrupted as corrupted you can be. John Rook is the associate chief judge in the province of Alberta, one of the highest judges. You know what this evil, wicked man did? He gave them a blanket order that they can now arrest anyone they want within the province of Alberta. Children, men, women, clergy, it doesn't matter. Anyone that dares to oppose the Nazi AHS, Alberta Health Services, can be arrested and charged with contempt of court. So those people showed up in our church, but our church was packed, standing room only. I was already preaching at the pulpit. They opened the door and someone yelled, "Gestapo is here." So I knew something is about to happen. So I said, okay, maybe it's my day today. They're going to have to carry me from the pulpit. But they realized this is going to be blood. There were men standing up, and I'm telling you what the men did. When someone yelled, "Gestapo is here," the men started to take their wallets and their keys, and they were giving it to their wives. They were ready to go to prison with their pastor. And that's what, my friends, this is what is going to take. This is what is going to take when we stand up together in unity. In unity. And this message has never changed. United we stand, divided we fall. The last prayer that Jesus had, it was about unity. He says, "I wish that they would be one just like I am with you." God wants us to unite. You see, I don't see colors. I didn't even know it's pitch. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, Martian. I don't care. If you're here, that means you're part of the family, or you need encouragement, you need hope. It doesn't matter. When you're standing in our lineups, that means you need what we are offering. It's the Lord's tables anyway. But that's why they wanted to divide us, to segregate, to separate. You know how predators hunt? They segregate, they separate, they look for the wounded elderly, and then they attack. That's exactly what this government did to us. The predators. I don't call them humans anymore. They are evil, wicked people. They are monsters. Those people in power. Bonnie Henry, she is a monster. And for that, she will have her moments with the judge of judges. And she will stand in front of our God naked. And she will pay for murders. She is guilty of murdering thousands upon thousands of human beings. John Rook gave them the power to arrest anyone. They opened the door. They realized it's going to be a blood. They waited for the people to go home. I went to the car with a friend, my brother David in the back. We were in the middle of the highway. The police behind us, SWAT team. We were told that we were under arrest in the middle of the highway, in rain. That's the video I'm sure some of you saw. Me on my knees. I was assaulted. I was hurt. They put me in a paddy wagon upside down. That's what the video will not show you. Maybe their personal cameras. They put me upside down, head on the floor. They threatened with more charges just for fun. They said, we will even charge you with assaulting police officers, peace officers. Well, I was charged with inciting people to come to the church. Duh. If there's a pastor here, that's our job. And by the way, have never changed. I want to incite you to come to our church. If you're in Alberta, Calgary, come to our church. If you are there, I was charged with my brother David. I think my brother David got arrested as a bonus. I think they understand the concept when you go to fast food, it's 2 for 1. I don't get it really. I don't understand why they were after him except just to break our morale as a family. You know, we were charged with inciting people to come to an illegal gathering, participating in illegal gathering, officiating in illegal gathering, and those are the exact charges you would hear under communism, under Nazism, fascism, illegal gatherings. You know how the Nazis and the communists were calling people like us? Bandits, lawbreakers. A repetition of history. What it was, we're witnessing in front of our very eyes. We spent 3 days and 2 nights on concrete, which is completely illegal. On Monday, we were taken, shackled like the most dangerous criminals on earth, shackled together, taken to the judge, and we've met the next crooked amigo. This guy's name is Adam Germain. Adam Germain, that psychopathic judge, he starts his proceedings by saying, we are in the middle of pandemic and this and that, and I turned to my brother David, well, he's a politician, he's not a judge even. He's not looking at the merits of the case. He doesn't care about the case. He is just parroting the CBC. That's it. And I said to him, we don't stand a chance with this guy. He's already bought and paid for. And I was right. It was there where I decided with my family I have to go to the United States and warn them. Because if America falls, there's no Canada. I know that some people don't like Americans, but I'm telling you, your military is one of the biggest jokes I have ever seen. And I have watched a lot of cartoons. We have pretty much no military anymore. You can be transgender there, you can be homosexual. I mean, they're more fired up for the Pride Parade than actually defending our nation. It's a joke. Without Americans backing us up, Canada would be conquered in a heartbeat. It would not be even a big of a fight. So we have to appreciate our neighbors. You don't have to like your neighbors. You're commanded to love your neighbors. I spent 4 months in the United States sharing my story, warning them, telling them that Canada has been taken over, it's China now, we're truly living behind the Iron Curtain, and if Americans, if you're not going to stand up and come and help, they're going to eat us and they will spit the bombs. Spent 4 months over there. Finally, it was time to come back, and Americans are like Polish people. That's why I feel like at home over there, because Polish people are crazy, Americans are crazy. We fit perfectly. If it comes to freedom, speech, yelling, screaming, woo, you know, all of that stuff, they're like my family. I mean, we have that every day. I got 3 children. It's just part of life in a Polish home, yelling and screaming and drama. So Americans are like that. And it was a wonderful experience. My wife came and my children came as well, and we were sharing. I think we visited about 30, 40 states during that time, and it was time to come back. It was time to come back. It was there where I met some of the most amazing human beings on earth. I spent 4 months with doctors, biologists, scientists, biologists. I mean, people a lot smarter than me if it comes to this field. And every single one of them, the experts were saying to me, this is a lie. This has nothing to do with biology. The virus is 1,000 times smaller than a bacteria. The piece of stupid Pampers are not going to stop this from coming in and going out. The same way, you see, I'm a man, and I think you guys can relate to this if you have ever had children. I think the worst thing that can happen to a man like me is when my children, when they were little, had an accident, and you smelled that accident. I call it the biological attack on me and at home, and my wife was not at home. So the first thing I would do, you know, I'm a smart cookie, so I'll grab a phone and say, honey, where are you? Are you far? And if she said 5 minutes, we were saved. Like literally, we would survive this ordeal. If she said 1 hour, 2 hours, I said, we're dead meat. We're not going to survive this. This is a biological attack. It worse. I have to deal with this. And you know how it is. You know, I had to change that kit and, you know, fix the problem and deal with Al-Qaeda, you know. over there, and we survived this. But my point is very simple. Right away, you knew there is a problem. You could smell it. You could smell it. So how do you think a piece of nothing on your face is going to stop a pathogen that is so small, that has absolutely no problem from coming in and going out? A lie. Also, I asked those experts, and I said, doctors, explain to me what happens to a human body when it takes this experimental drug. So they told me, and it was not good. And I said, what happens if people will keep taking it? Every single one of them, in different words, but every one of those experts, and I hang around with all of them, the most famous doctors on earth, every single one of them said to me, to my face, 3 to 5 years, millions of people are going to die. Millions. So I came with that story, but of course, before I came, I phoned my lawyers, and I said, is there any trouble for me? No, there are no warrants for your arrest. Plane, board the plane and come. So I did, and just an hour later, I was in Calgary, and our plane was diverted from a regular place to a customs building far, far away from anybody else, and then the police, like bandits, were waiting for me. I was arrested for not wearing a muzzle, and again for, I think, officiating in a legal gathering where I dared to baptize my daughter in a river, and then I was charged criminally at this time for this horrible crime. She was 12 at that time, and I was not hiding it. I think Rebel even covered me baptizing my daughter because I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not hiding. If you Google my name, my telephone number is still the same when we were in the business. Our home address is there. I remember one time Muslims called me and they said, we're going to chop your head off. I gave them my address and I said, see you in 20 minutes. I can't hide. The moment you allow fear to enter your heart, you're done in the public square. You cannot allow them to scare you. The moment that fear comes into your life, it cripples you, and you will be rendered useless. We must stand up. We must push. I was charged multiple times, and then finally I met the judge, the Adam Germain, the third crooked amigo from the province of Alberta, and believe it or not, he found us guilty on all charges. Guilty, of course guilty. This horrible pastor, he officiated a church service. How dare he? And then he did something unthinkable. He gave us a court order. Me, my brother David, and Chris Scott from the restaurant owner, he gave us an order to parrot government's narration if it comes to the COVID lie. Every time you talk to a human being, every time you preach from the pulpit, every time you do a podcast or a media interview, you must read this statement. The vaccines work, the masks are effective, and all of that garbage. So what I did, I grabbed a microphone, and I told you I got a big mouth, and I said, Judge, I hope you're listening. I'll never, ever obey this order. So you can send your sheriffs and arrest me. My brother David is less polished than me because we emigrated when he was a lot younger, so he's less polished than me. And he grabs a microphone and says, Judge, I hope you're listening to me. You can shove it when the sun doesn't shine. And I look at him and like, that's it. You just killed us. What I said was good enough. They're going to come guns blazing. It's over for us. You just finished us up. But they didn't arrest us then. They came later on. And we participated in the rallies. And that time, that moment in history was the most beautiful moment on this soil, on the Canadian soil. Because it reminded me of the solidarity movement. It reminded me of the people that were marching for their children and their grandchildren. When they took it to the streets during the solidarity movement, it was the sweetest and most beautiful thing ever. And the Canadians did it. And I remember marching with 10, 15, 20,000 people week after week on the streets of Calgary. I was preaching in other cities, Edmonton, whatever we could, Red Deer, High River, Okotoks, wherever I could. I was traveling around and giving people the message of hope. That in the end of the day, you got to remember, in the end of the day, truth will win. In the end of the day, righteousness will win. In the end of the day, history is teaching us that the good people will win. Sometimes it has to come, that victory, through suffering. And then the truck convoy came. And you know how many times by the judges, Crown prosecutors. You know, I have a probation officer. You know that? It's so funny because I'm looking at the clock, it's 8 o'clock, and I'm super dangerous after 7 p.m. For whatever reason, I activate after 7, and I'm on house arrest from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I'm still not activated. I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's the Vancouver Island air. I'm super dangerous, apparently, after 7 p.m. To come here, I needed a permission in writing from my probation officer to come here and spend some time on this beautiful island. So what happened was we were arrested multiple times with my brother David for just participating in different rallies and different protests. But when the truck convoy came, I was already well established as some called me Canada's pastor, freedom pastor. So the truckers called me and they said, Pastor Artur, will you do a church service for us? I'm telling you, they didn't have to ask me twice. It was a great privilege. The judges, the Crown prosecutors, the media, the politicians, everyone, including the probation officer, asked me to apologize for participating in the freedom movement, for being part of the truck convoy, and I said it, and I'll say it again, never, never. I will never apologize. I will never say I'm sorry for being part of the truck convoy, being part of the freedom movement. You see, I'm not a schizophrenic politician. I don't wear two hats. One on Sunday and another one on Monday. I just have one, which is the truth. So they asked us to feed them. My wife prepared a meal. I'll never forget it because I had lots of time in prison to think about that time. It was chilly, and we brought truckloads of food for the truckers, and I delivered a church service in the evening. They asked me to do another one in the morning before their departure to Ottawa, and I'm telling you, I wanted to go. I was ready to go. I had people telling me, come, we'll provide everything for you. But you see, we realized that there is so many thousands of people left behind. There's someone. There must be someone that stays behind and takes care of, that will take care of the rest of the people. So we prayed for them. Off they went. Laura Lynn came. She went to Ottawa. We gave them the banners, the solidarity, all those different things. And I got another phone call to come to Milk River. And here's the phone call that I received. People are depressed. They are losing hope. It's very tough. The police officers are standing in front of children playing hockey game with machine guns pointed to them. Would you, Pastor, come and just cheer us up and pray for us? So I brought my son Nathaniel, he's right there. And then I brought a worshiper. We brought speakers, food, and we went to Milk River. In Milk River, there was a lot of people, but the roads were open when we came. The roadblock was done by our CMP officers. So they blocked the road, preventing people from coming or going to Coutts. I delivered a church service. I remember it was crazy cold, 25, minus 30, something like that. And we did the Lord's Supper. We had a Holy Communion with the truckers, and Larry Heather, he was our worshiper. He was singing songs. We had a national anthem, and And then I thought to myself, the RCMP was there filming me. You know, some people thought that maybe they fell in love because they would follow me wherever I went and they would take pictures. I had my personal stalkers, you know, RCMP and police. So they were filming, they were taking pictures. Well, not a big deal. I don't care. That's why I said, you can film, you can share it. I have nothing to hide, and I'm not ashamed that I stood for our rights given to us by God, not by Trudeau, not by the Liberal Party, not by Conservative Party, by God. God is the one that died for our freedom. Trudeau didn't die for our freedom. It was Jesus that was nailed to a cross for the freedom. The Bible says, who comes to me is free indeed. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, the Bible says, there is liberty, there is freedom. If you want freedom, if you want liberty, invite God of liberty into your land. So I had a crazy idea, I always had crazy ideas. So I went to the RCMP headquarters and I said, would you let me to Quds? Would you allow me to go to Quds? Well, I had a backup plan. I had a helicopter waiting for me already. And then I had a combine ready waiting for me in a field. And then I had a big, powerful truck waiting in a ditch. So I had my backup plan. But I said, hey, let me ask. You never know. So I did. I asked them, and they said, sure. They opened the barricade for us, and me, my brother, my son Nathaniel, Larry, and a few other people, we went to Quds. We were taken to the restaurant, Smuggler's Salon, that was filled with people. The police was there, undercover, and people were really saddened by what they have seen, what the police was doing. It was very peaceful. They gave me a tour around. There were no guns. There was no talk of violence whatsoever. Everything you've heard in the media was a lie. Everything. The only violence throughout all of this ordeal was always coming from the politicians and the police. Never from our side. So I did what I do. I did the church service. I gave a 19-minute speech. During the speech, I told them to stand by God's given rights, to fight for their freedom, to do it peacefully, no guns, no swords, but to stand up. I reminded them about solidarity, like Wałęsa, like Gdańsk, all of those different things. I said, they've done it before, we can do it again. Who can stop 1 million people in Alberta? Who can stop tens of thousands of truckers? No one. No government. They don't have enough police. They don't have enough RCMP officers to stop people when they say enough is enough. And that's what I witnessed in Poland. But you got to remember, Solidarity movement was a peaceful uprising. It was a civil rights movement like Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi in India. It was never violence. So I did my speech, we had Lord's Supper, we were singing hymns, national anthem, I prayed for people, we had a dinner together. When I came, the roads were open, when I left, the roads were open. Not a big deal, no one stopped me, no one said anything until a few days later. And I remember my last rally was in, I think, Okotoks or High River. And I was telling people, remember their names. Remember the police officers, take their names, their badges. Remember the doctors that wanted to murder you. Remember the nurses that prohibited you to see your dying loved ones. Write down their names. One day, by God's grace, when we get the power back, we're going to go back in history and we'll charge them. We'll charge them with the Nuremberg trial number 2 because what they did is illegal and evil, and they should be charged with it. And that was my last speech. I think it scared them. I think it scared them so much that Tuesday, so that speech was Sunday, Tuesday morning I left my house. Later on we did find out that the police officers were monitoring me for a week in undercover cars. Can you imagine? And there was RCMP officers, a SWAT team, a special unit with cameras, a police special unit, and then there was detectives, police, undercover, uniformed police. You know, I felt like El Chapo, Al Capone of Alberta. You know? Can you believe it? The gong show. And then they get upset with me because I go to my knees. You want to play the game, I'm a Nazi? Then do the Nazi style. You have to carry me. And they always upsets them. They love to do this game, that they are the Nazis, but they don't want to play the whole game. So anyway, they had to carry me. I was interrogated for hours, taken to police station and then to processing, stripped naked, of course, put in a solitary confinement, denied access to lawyers for 3 weeks. But the biggest shocker to this ordeal was the next day. The next day, they came to my cell and they took me and they placed me in metal cages. And of course, I'm new at this game. I'm a criminal. I have no experience, right? I've never been arrested before. I always have been arrested and placed in a police station, never in prison. Actually, as a pastor, I was a chaplain in a medium and minimum prison in Drumheller. I was ministering there. So that was my experience with prisons. And they put me in metal cages. I have a friend that works there, and he says he has never, in his entire career, he has never seen anyone ever being put in metal cages. Metal cage is a box no bigger than this, when you sit and you cannot move. You cannot stand, you cannot move, you're kind of completely surrounded by metal and glass. To this day, I have no idea why they placed me there, and then they took me from that one and they put me to another one. And that was the game they were playing for 45 days. They would come to my solitary confinement. I was in isolation, being constantly coerced to take the job or the test. And I said, you people are crazy. I'm here already 30 days and you're still asking me to take a test for COVID that you say I cannot have because I'm in isolation for 14 days. And that's science? You people are crazy. So anyway, they would take me from isolation and they would place me to another cell on concrete, no water, no washroom. And that was every night. They took my write-ups because I couldn't have a contact with my lawyer. They confiscated my documents for the lawyer's eyes only. They confiscated my Bible. They would not give me writing materials because I was told I am considered to be the most dangerous offender in the province of Alberta. So that was going on for a long time. And then my son Nathaniel, my brother David, my wife, and the church, they were staging the longest ongoing protest in the history of the prison system outside of where I was being kept. And they were doing it. They were fighting for my life, and they were doing this every single day. And they were threatened with arrests. They got tickets. Some were arrested, actually. And Nathaniel had to pay his fine a few weeks ago because we were traveling and we couldn't fight it over there. So some people paid with arrests to stand up and fight for my life. During that time, 5 different inmates already testified to my lawyers when finally I was able to communicate with them that the guards were giving them incentives to murder me in prison or to severely beat me up. During that time, we were in total isolation. We were not allowed to play. There was no checkers, no chess, nothing. I think it was the most horrible experience I have ever experienced in my life. And finally, the inmates, they sent a petition to the director of prison and they said, if you don't release this man from isolation, you're going to have a riot. I was a hero in prison. Every single time I was being taken from my isolation to that concrete cell, the inmates were banging on the doors and they were yelling, "Free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art." So finally, when the director got scared that this might be a riot now, and they released me, I had my entire unit when I was locked, sitting at my Bible studies and at the church services. Every night, every day, I was praying, I was leading them to the Lord. They were crying, and some of those dudes, I'm telling you, I work with the homeless people, but if you see some of them in an alley, you pray to God. Slashed tattoos, markings that they murdered. I was sitting in prison with bank robbers, human traffickers, drug dealers, murderers for hire, you name it. The worst of the worst, and that was me. So I led them to the Lord, I prayed with them, and I remember when they were staging the protests outside and the truckers showed up with the banners and their big honking, and it was incredible. I remember this one guy, slashed and tattooed everywhere. He comes to my cell, and I'm thinking, oh boy, what is he going to do? And he just looks at me, and you never know what they're going to say, and starts to cry, and he says, "You just restored my humanity." And I said, "Thank you, Jesus, that he's not here to punch me." So that was going on for 45 days, and then I had every inmate on my tables, and I think that's what was upsetting them. And then one day, the guard comes to me. I was sitting and ministering to one of the inmates, and says, "You have a visitor." And I could look at the clock. They finally fixed the clock because it was broken for like 4 weeks. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. No one notified me that I'm going to have a visitor. It's fishy, but what do you do? He led me to the admission, and there were sheriffs waiting for me, and I was literally kidnapped from Calgary's Remand Center, shackled like an animal. The penguin march like you see in movies? So I was one of the penguins. And they took me to Edmonton Max Spot. I don't know if you're familiar, if you're not career criminals like me, you may not know, but Max Spot is a place for the most dangerous terrorists in the country. I was locked in that unit in freezing conditions. It was minus 28 outside. They kept me in freezing conditions by myself in the entire unit. No other inmate was there. And that's where I was almost broken, because everything they did to me, stripping me naked in front of men and women, and just flipping everything in my cell, and I was there by myself, in isolation. I was not allowed to have any interactions with another human being. They wanted to break me. The Crown Prosecutor twice came and asked if I'm willing to go home. Plead just to one charge, just one, and you can go home. Just one charge, just plead to one. You see, I realize that I have become a little bit more than just a person fighting for my own rights. I have become like a symbol. In lots of countries, a symbol of freedom, a pastor, a clergyman that is fighting for the rights of people, to be human. And I remember calling my wife, and I said, "How is the reaction? What are people saying? Anyone cares?" And she says, "Listen, don't quit, don't give up. There is thousands, tens of thousands of people that are cheering for you. They're praying. Your faces in Times Square, New York City. They started to do protests outside of Canadian embassies all around the world. Don't quit, don't give up." But when I was taken, to Max, but I'm telling you, I was that close. I realized I'm not coming home. I realized those people hate me so much that they're going to murder me in prison. And I already knew about the 5 inmates that were getting the incentives from the guards to murder me. So I knew the game is real. This is not a joke. So I called my wife. I was only allowed 20 minutes. So I went out, I grabbed a phone, and I said, "I don't think I'm coming home. If something will not happen, if I don't know if the lawyer will not send a letter to the judge to let her know what's happening to me, I am dying here. I am in freezing conditions. I cannot sleep. I'm shivering nonstop. They're cranking their conditioning. I'm not going to survive this." So she did. She called a lawyer. A lawyer sent a letter to the judge, and it scared them. Because now the judge heard, and if the judge heard, and it becomes a public knowledge, suddenly the whole world will know I was murdered in prison. And the next day, the officers asked me to pack my stuff, which I didn't have anything because everything was confiscated from me. Because now I was the most dangerous terrorist in the country. And they asked me to come down and move me from Max Spot to another unit. At that time, I had no idea where they are taking me, but I saw humans. I saw people. We had, in Calgary, we had blue coveralls, and it looked like Smurfs, you know, like a bunch of Smurfs, looking, especially when we were at the lockdowns. When they were protesting outside, the jail was at the lockdown. And one time they took me where there was hundreds of them sitting. It reminded me of that cartoon, Smurfs, 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 Smurfs. Everywhere were Smurfs. It was surreal. In Edmonton, it was pink. So we were pink Smurfs, I guess. But I didn't care. I saw humans. I was in isolation. I was not in a good condition. I was asking God, why me? Why is this happening to me? This was my 16th arrest, 120 court cases already, 340 citations. God, don't you have another? Maybe you can pick somebody else for a change. Give me a little bit of a break. Why me? Why am I here? And when they opened the door, it was the weirdest experience ever. The inmates were not your typical inmates. They were jumping up and down, walking in a circle. So I turned to the guards and I said, where am I? And they started to laugh. And they said, you're in the wild, wild west. And I said, what that even means? Well, you're in a psych ward. I said, oh, that makes sense. That's what Soviets did to pastors. That's what the Chinese and North Koreans are doing to the clergy. Now it makes perfect sense. So anyway, I was considered the most dangerous inmate in the country, and they put me with a schizophrenic that chopped his own brother with a machete. And as I walked in, I looked at the table. There's a little table and two beds. And he had pens and pencils. And remember, I was not allowed to have a pen because I was too dangerous. So I looked at the guy and I said, you know, I'm considered so dangerous I'm not allowed to have a pen. He said, oh, no problem, you can have mine. So he gave me his own pen, and I was able to keep writing what was happening to me. From that experience, I spent about a week over there. One of the fascinating things in psych ward is how they watch TV. It's actually quite interesting. So they got two TVs, and people are walking in a circle, jumping up and down, and it's like really fascinating to play chess with them. It's awesome, because I was winning every single time. You know, that was really good for my morale. You know, like I was the champion in the whole place. Playing soccer and other things, not so good. They didn't understand the concept of the game. But watching TV was the most amazing. You sat down and you said, okay, at least we're going to watch some decent movie. They had movies all the time. However, in psych ward, you only watch a movie 10 minutes. Because some inmate will jump up and change the channel. And then you watch another movie for 10 minutes. And then another will jump and change the channel, and we will be watching a third movie. And then the fourth one. I was there for a week, and I watched about 50 10-minute versions of the movies, which at that time was quite hilarious, because thank God I was not spending more time over there. Another funny part of me being there was when the doctor comes, and he says, Mr. Pawlowski, what are you doing here? I said, well, sir, I have no idea. The guards came, they took me from my spot, they brought me here, I'm here. Well, you're not allowed to be here. Actually, it's illegal for them to do that. You are not allowed to be in a psych ward. We cannot allow sane people without evaluation and the doctor's approval to be sent into a mental institution. And I said, well, thank you for your consideration. Thank you that you care. He says, no, it's not about you. You might hurt them. I said, okay, thank you. Thank you for your honesty. And he says, no, don't take it in the wrong way. If you're sane, you can take advantage of those people, right? They're not right. So it kind of makes sense. He said what the administration did was illegal. They took me from a max spot and they put me in a mental institution with other inmates without doctors' evaluation and the knowledge of Alberta Health Services. Another funny thing was I was invited to Mar-a-Lago to have a coffee with Donald Trump, and it was supposed to happen during my birthday, which is March 28th. However, I was in a psych ward during that time, and I'm sure there were many Donald Trumps and Bonapartes and maybe some other people logged there, but I'll never forget that coffee with Donald Trump in a psych ward. It was not the coffee. It was something. To this day, I don't really know what it was. It was not the coffee and it was not the milk. Definitely not milk. Some white stuff. So I'll never, ever forget the taste of that wonderful coffee sitting with Donald Trump in a psych ward in a Max Remand Center in Edmonton. Finally, they released me on bail. I spent 50 days in prison and was charged with inciting mischief, with eco-terrorism. I am the first and the only Canadian in the history of this country not only to be charged with this offense, which is interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act, but I am the first and the only, not only to be charged, but now I am found guilty of that terrorism charge. I am the first Canadian in history to be found guilty on inciting. Why you should concern about what happens to me? Because now you may have a conversation with another human being in a private settings, in a church, in a restaurant, in a movie theater. It doesn't matter. And if it's recorded, you might be charged with inciting. So for example, if you say to a friend, you know what, there is a rally against this bylaw, that's inciting. You are inciting another human being to participate in opposition to what government is doing. That's criminal. So I have been found guilty. The trial was for 2 days. During my trial, not one witness was called. No one was called. The entire trial was word by word what I said during that 19-minute speech in Coutts, word by word. The Crown Prosecutor was arguing with our defense what Mr. Pawlowski meant when he said peacefully. He probably didn't mean peacefully. He meant something else. He accused my speech and compared it to a Rwanda genocide during the trial. He said that I cost Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages when I delivered that speech. He said that what I said can be compared to someone that was inciting murder. And the solidarity hoodie that I had during that speech, that sermon, was inciting violence against the RCMP, against the police officers. So ultimately, the judge found me guilty. I'm guilty on all and every charge. I'm facing 10 years of imprisonment as we speak right now. My sentencing is August the 9th, and that's why I will need your help. Because the only thing those devils are afraid of, the only thing they're afraid of, they're not afraid of God, because they don't think there is God. They think they're not accountable to anyone. They think they're the pharaohs, they are the gods of today. But the only thing they really fear is political pressure. When I was locked there like an animal, Americans were fighting for me, Canadians were fighting for me, Polish people were fighting for me, and they were calling and making them so crazy upset that they paralyzed their entire phoning system. We know that because we have a friend that works there, and she said they eventually had to designate a switch called Artur Pawlowski because their phones were constantly paralyzed. And when the pressure, the emails, the phone calls were going over and over again, they hated me on the inside more than they hated me on the outside. And then the incentive scheme. I want to talk a little bit about incentives from the government. The government came and tried to bribe me multiple times. And don't you dare to think that the conservative government is better than the liberal government, or the liberal government is better than the NDP government. They all are the same. Same coin. The same game. Remember, what was done to me was done by the conservative government, and what is being done to me is done to me by Danielle Smith, the new leader of the conservative government. She is responsible for what is happening to me right now. I'm still on house arrest, like a criminal. She is doing this to me. So first they came and they offered me $2 million, and they would give me a land to build my church. And the only thing they asked me to do, just a little tiny thing, withdraw yourself from the public life. Just be a pastor. Just do what pastors do. And I said no. Then they came back and they said, if you will not run for political office, we're going to give you $250,000 a year, and we're going to give you office, the chair. You will become the chair of the public inquiry. Preston Manning, if you know politics in Alberta, Preston Manning took that job. That job was offered to me. And I said, okay, fine, that sounds awesome. It's good money, it's good title, and I really want to go after the villains. So what happens if I will find your government guilty? If some of your ministers broke the law, if some of the health inspectors, police officers, chief of police, oh, nothing. There's nothing you can do. So you want me to be your puppet for $250,000 and a fancy title? Not interested. Then they waited a couple months and they said, if you withdraw yourself from public square, we will remove all the charges. You will be free. I said no. And then the last one, she came to me and she said, if I cross the floor, during that time I was already elected, democratically elected, a leader of a political entity in the province of Alberta, and she said, if I cross the floors, if I join the Conservative Party, the United Conservative Party of Alberta, then I will receive a guaranteed office as an MLA within the government in this election. So I said, I'm not you, I'm not the whore of Babylon, I don't cross floors, and I'm not for sale. I'm already bought. Jesus bought me. I'm not for sale. And if you have been following Alberta's politics, you know we had a conversation. The conversation was recorded, it was leaked, released. It was actually released by people that are not allowed to do it. And there is an investigation going on. It was not me. We didn't release the video. It was given to people that were supposed to protect us, but they betrayed us. And that created a crazy story in Alberta's politics. But the conversation was pretty much that she is going to do what she promised, but she never did. When we voted for her, she said that she's going to bring amnesty bill for the people that have been subjected to this tyranny. When she was elected, she backpedaled like she is doing all the time throughout her career. She's not doing anything. She betrayed us, and for whatever crazy reason, I don't understand. But the very government that was raping Albertans for the past 3 years, Albertans voted back in. I don't get it. I don't understand Canadians anymore. I don't understand why would you in a right mind vote for the same government that did this to you in the first place. But it is what it is. I guess Canadians need to suffer more to realize how evil those people are and what is the end game. The end game is already in the open. You will own nothing. You will be happy. You will be eating the bags. And of course we know that they're going to kill us with taxes. They are murdering our economy. They are attacking our farmers. In Alberta, Danielle Smith is passing laws that the farmers cannot have more than 4 chickens without a special approval from the government. So this is happening right now in the province of Alberta under the leadership of the Conservative government. There are laws already passed that you're not allowed to collect water from rain. The penalty is $500, a bylaw ticket, if you collect water. So if you think that because they, at their mercy, allowed you to go back to your restaurants and hockey games, and if you think you're free, you're delusional. This is just a little pause, a little stop, and here is what I want to finish you with. If I go down, if for whatever reason God is not going to step in and He's not going to protect me on August the 9th, you're next. Because today, people like me, we are a shield between the corrupted governments, the tyrannical, evil, wicked people, and you. And we're standing still tall, and it's not many of us. Majority of the people that I marched with, the heroes that we have seen through the rebel news and other outlets, they are paid, bought and paid for, many of them. And I'm not going to name names because it will break your heart. What happened to some of the people you watched and you cheered, and they had the same incentives that they were offering to me. Money, we'll let the charges go, we will pretend we're after you, but in the end it's going to disappear, and many of them took the incentives. Some of the heroes that I remember I did podcasts with and we marched together, they went so far as to publicly support the conservative government in the last election last month. That's how crazy the whole situation is. So I was asked to talk a little bit about unity, and I want you to imagine ourselves in the trenches during the Second War or the First World War. Imagine you are next to a French guy. Maybe you don't like French people. Imagine you being next to a Russian guy. Maybe you don't like Russians. Or a German person or whatever person that is there in the trench with you but is shooting at your enemies. During that time, it doesn't matter what is that person's fate, what is his style, what is his language. As long as he's shooting the right direction, he's my brother, he's my friend. For that moment, I am heartbroken when I see so much division and fights between the people that should be united. Because I'm telling you, that big fish that came from my head is coming for your head. If my head goes down, your head is next. That's why I've decided to come, and if there is an opportunity for me to share the story and ignite people or inspire people, then I'll come. I'll come and I'll share that, because this is not the time for any divisions. I'm willing to march with anyone that is willing to march with us. My son Nathaniel was just arrested and charged a few months ago, and we brought Josh Alexander, also the young hero, Canadian hero, that is standing against this perversion and grooming of the children, the pedophilia. So they went to give Bibles outside of the high school. Josh was arrested. They burned the Bibles, they attacked, they assaulted the youth, and my son was charged with harassment, and he was charged with another bylaw. Because there is a law in the city of Calgary that prohibits anyone that is willing to oppose the grooming of the children, the drag queen story hour, and all that craziness. But what I'm getting at is that just a few weeks ago, the Muslims and the Hindus rose to the plate, and they started to take it to the streets. Because you see, I told them, they are coming for our children, for our Christian children. Be sure of it. It's just a matter of when, not if, when they're going to come for your children as well. Atheism, perversion, pedophilia, those people have no boundaries. And they don't care about anyone. They will come, they're like cancer. And cancer that never stops. Evil never stops. Evil must be stopped. As long as you're shooting at the right direction, you're my friend. A couple weeks ago, I received a phone call. They call themselves the Fixers. They are the friends of Harper, Kenny, and others. They are the most powerful people in the land. They called me and they said, if I withdraw myself from political realm and stop talking, then they're going to fix my problem. And the charges will disappear, and the sentencing, and I will not go back to prison. I said no. So I got a second phone call, and they said the judge was ordered to put you back in prison. Pack your stuff. So that's where it stands today. On August the 9th, I was told that the judge was ordered to put me back in prison. He has 10 years at his disposal, unless miracle happens or Canadians will rise up for us and put the pressure like never before. And how this can be achieved, you can phone the office of the Premier, you can phone the office of the Justice Minister. By the way, the new Justice Minister right now is a Muslim man, which is quite fascinating because the previous one was a Christian guy. And before him, the very one that arrested me was a Christian man from Nigeria, Casey Madu. After Casey Madu, that loves to be photographed with the Bible, the very one that sent the Gestapo and shut down Alberta's churches, that same guy was caught in corruption and had to step down. And the replacement of that man was another crooked man that was the Minister of Health, Tyler Shandro. Tyler Shandro then becomes the Minister of Justice, without justice, of course, and that's the man that was responsible for my prosecution and persecution. That's how twisted this political arena is. The very people that did this to us are responsible for judging us. We never stood a chance. That's why we need you. We need you to help, to spread the word around, send it. Be annoying. When I was with a pastor in Port Alberni, I shared that and I asked people, and one guy already called us and said, I called 110 times. Imagine if only 1,000 people called 100 times. For a few weeks, we got over a month. So what I'm going to do after coming from here, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my time until the sentencing, and I will do as many shows as humanly possible. I'm going to try to be as loud. You see, they came to me with bribery. I didn't take it. They came to me with threats. I did not get scared. They wanted me to keep my mouth shut. When the devil shows up and tells you be quiet, you yell even louder. Benjamin Franklin said, he made this amazing statement, and here's what he said: fear God, and your enemies will fear you. And that's what we're witnessing in front of our very eyes. They're terrified of anyone that preaches and speaks the truth. So I want to thank you. I know that there are some questions. You want to open to questions? I have no problem. When the media call me, and they said, is there anything you cannot talk about or you don't want to talk about? I said, no, fire at will. If I have the answer, I'll give it to you. If I don't know, then I just simply do not know, because I'm not your typical politician that when you answer him a simple question, he takes you to Kamchatka back and forth, and you have no idea what he talked about. And he never answers the question. You know? We must change that. And we have to remind ourselves that we are the power. It's not them. You got to remember, empires fall because few people were willing to stand up. You know how the Solidarity movement started? You know who started the Solidarity movement? It was a woman. It was a lady. She started it. You know who had the biggest impact during the Civil Rights movement in America? It was a black woman that refused to go to the back of the bus, if you know the story. Ladies, you are a power horse. Don't you allow any man or anyone to tell you that you have no voice and there is nothing you can do. And men, for some of you, I have just chastising. Be a man. It's time for Canadian men. It's time for Canadian men to be men for a change. Rise up, stand up. We were called to be protectors. We were called to be providers. We were called to be those that defend and stand, and the shepherds receive the sick to fend off the hyenas or the wolves, and sometimes to bring to their senses the sheep. It's time for a man to rise up, stand up. We have wonderful women. I would not be able to do this without my wife. My wife that fought for my very life when I was locked like an animal, that is standing with me no matter what. And my son Nathaniel is right there. As a father, I want to tell you, maybe this will sound crazy, but as a father, I couldn't be more proud of my boy than when he came home and said, I got detained today. And then, when he came back and said, they finally charged me, praise Jesus. Thank you, God, that I have been able to raise with my wife a child that is not a coward. That a young man that understands what's at stake, a young man that is willing to defend you ladies from pedophiles and groomers and perverts that want to come to your washroom. What kind of a human has the urge to strip himself or herself naked in front of little children is beyond me. What kind of a person forces himself into a woman's bathroom? It's beyond me. That's a perversion at the highest level. Leave our women alone and leave our children alone. Let the children be children. Don't teach them sexual perversion. Don't teach them how to have sex when they are 6. Let them be kids. Let them play. There will come a time when they will learn how to be an adult. So thank you so much. If there are any questions,